Immigration will be absolutely key to maintaining the predominant position of the United States in the world. It has to be properly managed, of course. I agree with the notion that if you don't control your borders, you can't have a sovereign country. Every sovereign country in the world controls its borders. But we need immigration. It's always fueled American growth and dominance, and it'll continue to do so. I think we'll be in a strong position. Thanks to carefully managed immigration, we can maintain and even increase somewhat our population. I think we'll continue to maintain and even increase our technological lead. So much good thinking and work is being done in the U.S. high-tech sector. We tend to overemphasize, I think, the extent to which our competitors are supposedly gaining a lead on us there. I think that we'll continue to lead the world in 2100 as we do now, if we can maintain a stable flow of necessary immigrants into the country. The worst thing for us would be a renewed nativism, which closed the borders and prevented, the arrival of economically useful migrants. That would be catastrophic. We can't let that happen.
Well, saved implies that we need to be saved. It's I think we can at least put a question mark by that, even if fertility remains low and that slack isn't taken up by immigration. It's not clear the United States is going to collapse, even though economic growth may slow. And keep in mind that what people should really be worrying about here is the effect of slow population and labor force growth on sort of the overall dynamism and productivity of the country. To simply have less people and therefore less economic growth is not necessarily bad, because what really raises living standards is productivity, which is, another GDP per capita, right? You can have fewer people, but that means the GDP you have gets divided up among relatively fewer people as you go forward, right? I mean, if the population is growing fast, then GDP to some extent will reflect that, because GDP growth is a product of population, labor force growth, and productivity growth. So people could be as well off, even if economic growth slows, if you look at it in a GDP per capita sense. But people are worried about the extent to which low labor force growth will impact the overall dynamism and productivity of the economy, and therefore actually will take a big bite out of living standards eventually. Now, that said, if we do think that it's a good thing if we have fairly, pretty solid labor force growth, better overall economic growth, a more dynamic economy, which might stem from that greater labor force growth, then yeah, I mean, you could potentially solve that problem with immigration. Now, you're on all else equal, you're probably better off having more of that immigration composed of more skilled immigrants than less skilled immigrants. More of that immigration being composed of people who are not in the shadows of the economy, but in the mainstream of the economy, and can be dealt with as such. We now have a situation where not only is there a lot of controversy about immigration, a good chunk of the immigration we get is illegal immigration that comes from the South, which necessarily puts these workers on the margins of the economy in less productive occupations. So that's to say there is potential here to use immigration to juice the growth of the economy and of the country, but it does depend on not just how much, but what kind of immigration we have and how we handle that. And as I think it's fair to say, neither party has any friggin' idea what they're doing in terms of this issue. I mean, battle lines are drawn, but nobody really has a plan. The wall was a ridiculous idea that Trump had, but simply being lenient about immigration at the border is not much of a policy either. I mean, basically, you therefore send messages and signals that it's not so hard to get into the U.S. as it was, so why not give it a try? And that's kind of the situation we have now. So, I mean, I would say all else equal, I'm happier with being nice than being not nice, but being relatively nice is not an immigration policy.